Captain George Miller stood on the bridge of the USS Intrepid and took a deep breath. This was it. Humanity's first journey beyond the solar system. The experimental faster-than-light drive hummed beneath his feet, a sound both exciting and terrifying. "Final. Checks complete, Captain," said Lieutenant Jack Hoffman from the tactical station. The young officer's fingers tapped nervously on the console. "All systems green." George nodded and looked around at his crew. They were the best Earth had to offer, selected from thousands of applicants. Dr. Olivia Wright caught his eye and smiled. The xenobiologist had been waiting her whole life for this moment, the chance to discover alien life. "Well," said George, settling into the captain's chair, "let's make history. Engage FTL drive." The stars outside the viewport blurred as the Intrepid leapt forward, tearing a hole in space. The journey that would have taken centuries now took minutes. When the ship emerged, a blue-green planet hung before them. "That's not on our charts," said Olivia, leaning forward with excitement. "We've gone farther than planned." Jack frowned at his readings. "Captain, I'm detecting hundreds of ships in orbit around that planet, all unknown configurations." Before George could respond, the communication system activated. A face appeared on screen. At least George thought it was a face. It had 6 eyes arranged in a circle and a mouth that moved sideways instead of up and down. "Unidentified vessel," the alien said in perfect English, shocking everyone on the bridge. "You have entered restricted space during the Grand Galactic Council meeting. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." George stood up straight. "This is Captain George Miller of the USS Intrepid representing Earth. We come in peace. How are you speaking our language?" The alien blinked all 6 eyes in sequence. "We have been monitoring your broadcast for decades. Your species was deemed too unpredictable for contact. Yet here you are, proving our assessment correct by appearing at the single most important diplomatic gathering of the century." Olivia couldn't contain her excitement. "There's a whole galactic community? How many species? What biological variations exist? This is amazing." The alien seemed taken aback by her enthusiasm. "You will be assigned a guide. Proceed to Docking Bay 94. The screen went dark. "Well," said George with a sigh, "not exactly the first contact scenario we practiced." 3 hours later, George, Olivia, and Jack stood in a massive hall filled with creatures of every imaginable shape and size. Their guide, who introduced himself as Ambassador Zixtar, looked almost human except for his blue skin and the ridge of small spines running down his head. "The Galactic Council consists of 218 species," Zixtar explained as they walked, "all living in harmony for over 4,000 years. We follow the path of logic, making decisions based on careful analysis and 1,000-year plans." "That's impressive," said George, trying not to stare at a being that appeared to be made entirely of floating crystals. "Earth nations rarely plan beyond the next election cycle." Zixtar stopped walking. "This is precisely why humans concern us. You act without planning, how do you say it? Wing it." Jack shrugged. "Sometimes the best plan is no plan." Zixtar looked horrified. They approached a group of tall, thin aliens with long necks. Zixtar demonstrated the proper greeting, a complex series of hand gestures followed by a bow. One of the aliens extended an arm toward Jack in what looked like a threatening motion. Without hesitation, Jack grabbed the arm and flipped the alien onto its back. In seconds, security drones surrounded them, weapons ready. "He was attacking me," Jack protested. "He was offering the ceremonial greeting of the Plex hierarchy," Zixtar shouted. "You just assaulted the Deputy Minister of Interspecies Relations." The incident required hours of apologies and explanations. By the time they returned to the Intrepid, an emergency council session had been called to discuss the human situation. In the ship's conference room, George poured himself a cup of coffee as Olivia downloaded data about the various alien species. "Their biology is fascinating," she said. "Most species sleep for days at a time. They think our sleep cycle is bizarre and unsettling, and they're terrified by our ability to consume caffeine. It's highly toxic to 90% of council races." Zixtar entered the room looking tired. The Council has reached a decision. Humanity will be placed under probation. I have been assigned to assess whether you are too dangerous to join galactic society. Dangerous? George asked, sipping his coffee. We came in peace. Lieutenant Hoffman physically assaulted a diplomat. You consume poison for pleasure, he pointed at the coffee. And your medical records show your bones can heal from breaks in mere weeks. Most species take years to recover from such injuries, if they survive at all. Jack leaned forward. So we're stronger and tougher. That doesn't make us dangerous. It is not your physical attributes that concern us most, said Zixtar. It is your chaos. The Council analyzes all possibilities before acting. Humans leap without looking. You improvise when plans fail instead of retreating to recalculate. It is disturbing. George nodded slowly. I understand your concerns, Ambassador. We'll do our best to show you that human unpredictability can be a strength, not just a danger. Zixtar seemed unconvinced. Later that night, as the ambassador observed from the doorway, the senior officers gathered to discuss their situation. So what's the plan, Captain? Asked Olivia. George smiled. We'll figure it out as we go. Let's see what opportunities come up to show the Council what humans can offer. And if we mess up again, Jack asked. Then we'll improvise, said George. From the doorway, Zixtar's eyes widened in horror. These humans didn't even have a plan to prove they weren't dangerous. They were going to see what opportunities come up. His report to the Council would have to include this disturbing approach to galactic diplomacy. Just then, the communication officer's voice came over the intercom. Captain Miller, message from Earth. 3 more ships are being prepared for launch. They want to know if they should proceed. Zixtar nearly fainted. More humans were coming, and they were just as unpredictable as these ones. The galaxy was not prepared for such chaos. George caught the ambassador's expression and tried to look reassuring. Don't worry, Ambassador. Things will work out fine. Somehow, those words worried Zixtar more than anything else that had happened that day. 6 months had passed since the USS Intrepid made first contact with the Galactic Council. Captain George Miller stood at the viewport, watching as Proxima Station grew larger in their approach. The massive structure looked like a metal snowflake, floating in space, with ships of various designs coming and going from its many docking arms. Station Control has cleared us for docking at Bay 17, said Lieutenant Jack Hoffman. They sound nervous about our arrival. Dr. Olivia Wright joined them at the viewport. Can you blame them? According to Ambassador Zixtar, we've become the scary bedtime story parents tell their children across the galaxy. George smiled. The fearsome humans who drink poison and break their own bones for fun. Ambassador Zixtar entered the bridge, datapad in hand. I assure you, it is no laughing matter. This visit to Proxima Station is a critical test of humanity's ability to behave in civilized space. Over 10,000 beings from 30 different species call this station home. We'll be on our best behavior, George promised. No tackling anyone this time, Jack. Jack put up his hands. One mistake and nobody lets you forget it. As the Intrepid docked, Chief Engineer Steve Carter joined the landing party. The engineer had earned a reputation among the crew for fixing things in ways the instruction manuals never intended. George had chosen him specifically for this visit, hoping to show the Council that human creativity could be an asset. A tall, thin alien with gray skin and 4 arms greeted them at the airlock. Welcome to Proxima Station. I am Commander Cazell, Chief of Security. I must ask that you stay within designated visitor areas and avoid touching any station equipment. Afraid we'll break something? Steve asked with a smile. Precisely, replied Cazell without a hint of humor. The tour of Proxima Station was impressive. The central hub contained a marketplace where traders from across the galaxy exchanged exotic goods. Ambassador Zixtar explained that the station served as a major commerce center at the edge of Council space. Many species conduct business here who cannot visit each other's homeworlds due to atmospheric requirements, he said. The environmental systems maintain different conditions in different sections. Steve looked up at the complex network of pipes and conduits running along the ceiling. Impressive engineering. What's your backup system if the main power fails? Commander Cazell blinked slowly. The system is designed not to fail. It has operated without interruption for 73 years. Steve opened his mouth to respond but was cut off by a sudden dimming of the lights. A moment later, a low rumble shook the station, and the lights went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Computerized voice announced, "Critical system failure detected. Life support compromised in sectors 7 through 28. All personnel evacuate affected areas." Panic erupted in the marketplace as aliens rushed toward the exits. Commander Cazell stood frozen, his 4 hands twitching at his sides. "This is impossible," he whispered. "The system cannot fail." George turned to the security chief. "Where's your engineering center? We can help." Cazell seemed to snap out of his shock. "Non-station personnel are not authorized." Another explosion rocked the station, cutting him off. The emergency lights flickered. "Life support failure spreading to sectors 29 through 32, announced the computer. "Estimated time to critical. Atmosphere loss 12 minutes. "We don't have time to debate," George said firmly. "People will die. Let us help." Cazell hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me." The engineering center was chaos. Aliens of various species stared at displays showing cascading system failures. None seemed to know what to do. "The automation is not responding," one technician reported. "Manual overrides are inactive." Steve pushed his way to a control panel. "Let me see." Ambassador Zixtar pulled George aside. "What is happening?" "The council assured me this station has redundant safety systems. I'm guessing someone wanted to make sure those systems failed," George replied. "This looks deliberate," Steve called out from the panel. "The main power couplings have been physically severed. Someone cut them from inside the maintenance tunnels." "Sabotage," whispered Commander Cazell. "But who would dare attack a council facility?" George noticed a small alien watching from the corner. Unlike the others, he showed no sign of panic. When their eyes met, the alien turned and slipped out the door. "Jack with me," George said. "I think I just spotted our saboteur." As George and Jack pursued the suspicious alien, Steve examined the station schematics. "The life support systems are failing because they can't draw power from the main reactor. We need to reroute through the auxiliary systems." "Impossible," said a technician. "The auxiliaries are not designed to handle that load." Steve grinned. "Then we'll redesign them." He grabbed tools from a nearby cabinet and began opening panels, connecting systems that were never meant to work together. The station technicians watched in horror as he bypassed safety protocols and jury-rigged connections. "This violates all operating procedures," one protested. "Operating procedures won't matter if everyone's dead," Steve replied, not looking up from his work. Meanwhile, George and Jack cornered the suspicious alien in a cargo bay. The creature was small, with purple skin and 6 eyes, the marking of a merchant guild. "Merchant Lord Vex," Commander Cazell said as he caught up to them. "You did this? Why?" The alien sneered. "The station refused my request for exclusive trading rights. If I cannot have Proxima Station, no one will. My ship is waiting. You cannot stop the destruction. Watch us," said Jack. Back in engineering, Steve had created what he called a beautiful mess of wires and components. "Ready to try it," he announced. "This might get a little weird." He activated his makeshift system. The lights flickered, then came back on at full strength. A cheer went up from the gathered aliens. "Rerouting life support now," Steve said, fingers flying over the controls. "We should be able to restore atmosphere in the affected sectors before anyone suffers permanent damage." One of the technicians studied Steve's work with amazement. "This configuration should not function. It defies our engineering principles." "Sometimes, you have to break the rules to save lives," Steve replied. By the time George and Jack returned with their prisoner, Steve had stabilized the station's critical systems. Ambassador Zixtar watched the humans work with a mixture of fascination and horror. "Captain," the ambassador said quietly, "do you realize what your engineer has done? He completely disregarded established procedures. He connected systems that our scientists have determined should never interact. And somehow, it worked better than the original design. George nodded. That's what humans do, Ambassador. We adapt, we improvise, we survive. And that, said Zixtar, making notes on his datapad, is precisely what terrifies the Council about your species. The next day, as the Intrepid prepared to depart, Commander Cazell approached George with a formal
bow.
Captain Miller, the Council has asked me to convey their gratitude for your assistance. Without your crew's unconventional methods, many lives would have been lost. Happy to help, George replied. That's what neighbors do. As they walked back to the ship, Ambassador Zixtar seemed troubled. You do realize, Captain, that the Council scientists are now studying every modification your engineer made, trying to understand how his chaos produced order. George smiled. Just wait until they meet the rest of humanity, Ambassador. We're just getting started. 1 year after first contact, the USS Intrepid approached the gleaming planet of Harmonium. The massive world served as headquarters for the Galactic Council, its surface covered with perfectly arranged cities that looked like geometric patterns from orbit. It's beautiful, said Dr. Olivia Wright, gazing at the view screen. Every building placed with mathematical precision. Captain George Miller nodded. And we're about to bring our human chaos into their perfect order. The Intrepid wasn't alone, this time. 2 other Earth ships followed behind, and aboard was Ambassador Susan Ward, Earth's first official diplomat to the Galactic Council. After the Proxima Station incident, the Council had reluctantly agreed to formal diplomatic negotiations. Remember, Ambassador Zixtar warned as they prepared to shuttle down to the surface. These negotiations follow the traditional protocol of harmonious discourse. It has 12,000 steps that must be completed in exact order. Susan smiled confidently. I've studied the protocol, though I wonder if we might be able to streamline the process a bit. Zixtar's blue skin paled slightly. Streamline? That would be unprecedented. The diplomatic party arrived at the Council's Great Hall, a massive building with ceilings that soared hundreds of feet overhead. Thousands of alien representatives filled the chamber, each species in its designated section. At the center stood a raised platform where the Grand Counselor waited. Grand Counselor Plex was ancient even by his species' standards. His skin was nearly transparent and his movements slow and deliberate. When he spoke, the entire hall fell silent. Representatives of Earth, he said, his voice carrying without effort. You come before the Galactic Council seeking recognition and trading rights. The negotiations will proceed according to the traditional protocol. Step 1, the Declaration of Peaceful Intent. What followed was 6 hours of ritualized statements, each requiring specific responses. By hour 3, George noticed his crew growing restless. Jack Hoffman kept shifting his weight from foot to foot. Even the disciplined Susan Ward was struggling to maintain her diplomatic composure. Finally, Susan stepped forward. Grand Counselor, with all respect for your traditions, might we skip ahead to step 4302, the exchange of material concerns? Earth is particularly interested in discussing technology exchange. A collective gasp echoed through the hall. Ambassador Zixtar closed his eyes in what appeared to be physical pain. Skip ahead? Grand Counselor Plex repeated slowly, as if the concept was difficult to grasp. The protocol has never been skipped. From the side of the hall, a tall, severe-looking alien in a military uniform stepped forward. This is precisely why humans cannot be trusted, Grand Counselor. They have no respect for order. Admiral Draz, Zixtar whispered to George. Head of the Council military. He has opposed human integration from the beginning. Admiral Draz activated a projection in the center of the hall. Images of Earth's wars and conflicts played for all to see. This species has fought itself constantly throughout its history. They solve problems with violence and chaos. They cannot be allowed full access to Council technology or territory. Susan stepped forward again. With respect, Admiral, we don't deny our violent past. But we've learned from it. Humanity is still growing, still evolving. A convenient claim, Draz replied coldly. Before the debate could continue, a strange pulsing sound filled the hall. From one section, a group of aliens rose together. They moved in perfect unison, their bodies connected by thin tendrils of light. "The Hive Intelligence requests to speak," announced a council aide. Grand Counselor Plex nodded. "Granted." The Hive Intelligence spoke with many voices layered together. "We wish to understand these humans. Their concept of individuality within collective goals confuses us. We request permission to sample their consciousness." George leaned toward Zixtar. "Sample our consciousness?" "They wish to temporarily connect their mind to yours," Zixtar explained quietly. "It is considered a great honor." Jack stepped back. "No way is anyone connecting to my brain." The Hive Intelligence pulsed with new colors. "The humans refuse? This is unexpected. All species share thoughts with the Hive when requested." "Humans value privacy," Susan explained diplomatically. "Our thoughts are our own. We'd be happy to explain our perspective through conversation instead." "Individual thoughts kept private?" The Hive's pulses turned dark red. "This concept is disturbing. How can you function without complete knowledge sharing?" As Susan tried to explain human privacy concepts to the bewildered Hive Intelligence, George noticed a subtle movement near one of the hall's side entrances. A hooded figure slipped inside, something clutched in its hands. Years of military training triggered George's instincts. "Everyone down!" he shouted, lunging toward Susan and pulling her to the floor just as the figure threw a glowing device into the center of the hall. The device erupted with blinding light and a high-pitched noise that sent most of the alien delegates to their knees in pain. Through the chaos, George saw the attacker moving toward the Grand Counselor's platform. "Jack, with me," George called out. Without hesitation, Jack vaulted over a row of seats, cutting off the attacker's path. The hooded figure pulled out a weapon, but Olivia, who had circled around from the other side, struck the attacker's arm with a ceremonial staff she'd grabbed from a nearby display. The weapon clattered to the floor as Council security forces finally responded, surrounding the would-be assassin. The entire incident lasted less than 30 seconds. As order slowly returned to the hall, George helped the Grand Counselor to his feet. The ancient alien regarded him with an unreadable expression. "You acted without orders," Plex said quietly. "Without protocol. Without plan." "There wasn't time for a plan," George replied. "Sometimes you have to react." Later, in a private chamber away from the main hall, Grand Counselor Plex met with the Earth delegation. Admiral Draz stood rigidly at his side, while Ambassador Zixtar looked nervously between them. "Your actions today were—" The Grand Counselor paused, seeming to search for the right word. "Effective, but deeply troubling." "We saved your life," Jack pointed out. "Indeed. But the manner in which you did so exemplifies why many in the Council fear humans." Plex's transparent fingers tapped together. "Each of you acted independently without coordination, yet somehow achieved a unified goal. There was no command structure, no communication, just chaos." "Organized chaos," Susan suggested. "An oxymoron to Council thinking," Draz said sharply. The Grand Counselor raised a hand for silence. "The Council has reached a decision. Earth will be granted limited diplomatic status. You may establish an embassy and begin restricted trade negotiations. But full integration into Council society must wait. You are too unpredictable." That evening, as the Earth delegation prepared to return to their ships, George found himself alone with the Grand Counselor. "You know," Plex said softly, "many believe we fear humans because of your capacity for violence. This is incorrect. The galaxy has seen violence before. What truly terrifies us is your unpredictability. Every other species we have encountered follows logical patterns of behavior. Humans do not." George nodded slowly. "I understand that can be frightening." "Terrifying," Plex corrected. "But also fascinating." The Council has existed for thousands of years with little change. Perhaps a little unpredictability is not entirely unwelcome. As George rejoined his crew, he noticed the hive intelligence watching from a distance, their connected minds still trying to comprehend a species that kept its thoughts private. Admiral Draz studied tactical displays, already planning containment measures for human expansion, and Ambassador Zixtar updated his ongoing report on human behavior. The report's latest entry simply read, "Humans remain the most unpredictable species in known space. This makes them either the galaxy's greatest threat or its greatest hope, perhaps both." 2 years had passed since humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council. The USS Intrepid, now upgraded with technology traded from friendly alien species, patrolled the border between Council space and the uncharted sectors. Captain George Miller stood on the bridge looking at the stars displayed on the main view screen. "Status report," he said, settling into his command chair. "All systems normal, Captain," Lieutenant Jack Hoffman replied from the tactical station. "We're approaching the Omega Sector boundary marker." Lisa Freeman, the new intelligence officer assigned to the Intrepid 6 months ago, looked up from her console. "Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from beyond the border. They don't match any known Council vessels." George frowned. "Put it on screen." The view screen shifted to show several small, dart-shaped ships moving in perfect formation. Their hulls were black with glowing red lines running along their sides. "I've never seen ships like that before," Jack said. The communication system chimed. A familiar blue face appeared on screen. "Captain Miller," said Admiral Draz, the Council, military leader who had opposed human expansion since first contact. "Your vessel is to withdraw from the border immediately. This is a Council military matter." George straightened in his chair. "Admiral, we're detecting unknown vessels. Do you have information about them?" Admiral Draz's expression hardened. "The Kreltor are a hostile species from beyond Council space. They have attacked 3 outposts in the past month. This situation requires methodical, proven Council defense protocols, not human chaos." "With respect, Admiral," George said, "if they've attacked 3 outposts, your protocols don't seem to be working." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Withdraw your vessel, Captain. That's an order." The screen went dark. "Well, he's friendly as ever," Jack muttered. Lisa stood up. "Captain, I've been studying the reports from those outpost attacks. Council forces have been completely ineffective against these Kreltor ships. They're losing this conflict." George nodded slowly. "And Admiral Draz is too proud to admit it. Keep monitoring those ships, but maintain our distance for now." 3 days later, the situation had changed dramatically. The Intrepid received an emergency transmission from a Council colony world under attack. When they arrived, they found the colony's orbital defenses destroyed and Kreltor ships landing ground forces. "They're targeting civilian areas," Jack reported, his voice tight with anger. George opened a channel to Council command. To his surprise, Admiral Draz appeared on screen, looking exhausted. "Captain Miller," the Admiral said without his usual hostility, "the Council requests human assistance with the Kreltor threat. Our conventional defenses have proven inadequate." George raised an eyebrow. "That must have been difficult to admit, Admiral." "There are 20,000 civilians on that planet," Draz replied. "Pride is irrelevant." "We'll do what we can," George promised. "Intrepid out." Lisa approached with a datapad. "Captain, I've been analyzing the Kreltor attack patterns. They're methodical to a fault, following the same tactical sequence in every engagement. They expect their enemies to respond according to standard military doctrine." "Which is exactly what the Council forces have been doing," George realized. "Precisely," Lisa nodded. "The Kreltor anticipate every move because Council military protocols haven't changed in centuries." George smiled slowly. "Then let's show them something they've never seen before. Jack, prepare for chaotic maneuvers pattern Miller 3. Steve, I need the engines to do things the designers never intended." "My specialty, Captain," Chief Engineer Steve Carter replied over the comm with a grin in his voice. The Intrepid swooped into the battle, moving in unpredictable patterns that confused the Kreltor targeting systems. Instead of maintaining a safe distance as Council ships did, George ordered the Intrepid to weave between enemy vessels, causing them to fire on each other. "They're breaking formation," Jack reported with satisfaction. "Their coordination is falling apart." On the planet's surface, human landing parties led by Jack moved quickly to evacuate civilians. When Krelltor ground forces approached in rigid formations, the humans used the environment to their advantage, setting traps and creating diversions. Admiral Draz watched from his command ship as the single human vessel wreaked havoc on the disciplined Krelltor fleet. "Impossible," he whispered. "They're violating every principle of space combat." 3 more human ships arrived, responding to George's call for assistance. Each took up positions that made no sense according to traditional tactics, yet somehow formed a perfect trap for the increasingly confused Krelltor. Within hours, the Krelltor retreated, having suffered their first defeat since entering Council space. In the aftermath, George led a team to a damaged Krelltor ship that had been captured. Inside, they found the ship's commander, a tall humanoid with gray skin and ridges covering its skull. "How?" the Krelltor commander asked when George entered. "How did you defeat us? Our simulations predicted every possible Council response." "That's your mistake," George replied. "Humans aren't the Council. We don't follow predictable patterns." The alien's eyes widened. "The unpredictable ones. We thought you were just a myth." Later, Admiral Draz requested a meeting with George aboard the Intrepid. The Admiral walked slowly around the bridge, studying the human crew at work. 17 species, he said quietly. "Excuse me?" George asked. The Krelltor commander we captured revealed they had conquered 17 other species before reaching Council space. All of them were methodical, predictable, like us. Admiral Draz turned to face George. "I've spent 2 years trying to contain humanity's chaotic influence on the galaxy. Now I wonder if that chaos is exactly what we need." Ambassador Zixi Tar, who had continued his observation of humans throughout their integration with the Council, nodded in agreement. "Captain Miller, my latest report to the Council will state that human unpredictability is both your species' greatest strength and most terrifying trait." "Is that a compliment, Ambassador?" George asked with a smile. "I'm not entirely sure," Zixtar admitted. Admiral Draz straightened his uniform. "Captain, the Council has authorized me to request human assistance in developing new defense strategies against the Krelltor. We need your creative approach." "We'd be happy to help," George said. "That's what allies do." As the Admiral prepared to leave, Lisa approached with new intelligence reports. "Captain, we've analyzed the data from the captured Krelltor ship. There are more of them coming, a lot more." George nodded. "Then we'd better get creative. Admiral, it seems the galaxy might need human chaos more than ever." For the first time since they'd met, Admiral Draz smiled. "Perhaps that's why you terrify us so much, Captain. Deep down, we always knew the order we cling to was just an illusion. The universe is chaos, and you humans embrace that truth." As the Intrepid set course for the next potential Krelltor target, George couldn't help but wonder if the galaxy's fear of humanity would eventually turn to gratitude. Either way, humans were here to stay, bringing their unique brand of chaos to the stars. 3 years had passed since humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council. Earth buzzed with excitement as ships from across the galaxy arrived for the historic visit. It was the first time the Grand Counselor would set foot on human soil. Captain George Miller, now promoted to Admiral, stood beside President Diane Clark on the specially built landing platform in Washington, D.C. Around them, crowds gathered behind barriers, eager to see the alien visitors. "Nervous?" George asked the President. "Terrified," she admitted with a smile. "But in a good way. 3 years ago, we didn't know aliens existed. Now they're coming to dinner." The sky darkened as the Council flagship entered the atmosphere. Unlike human ships, it moved in perfect silence, a gleaming silver disk that settled onto the landing pad with precision. Ambassador Zixtar was the first to emerge. After 3 years observing humans, he almost looked comfortable among them. Behind him came Admiral Draz, who had become an unlikely ally after the Krelltor conflict. And finally, Grand Counselor Plex, the ancient leader of the Council, appeared. At the top of the ramp, The Grand Counselor was tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed almost translucent. His eyes were large and completely black, taking in everything with careful consideration. "President Clark," the Grand Counselor said, his voice soft yet carrying across the platform. "It is my honor to finally meet you in person." "The honor is ours," Diane replied, performing the formal council greeting that George had taught her. Later, in the White House meeting room, the real discussions began. Dr. Peter Johnson, a human scientist who had developed a system to help aliens understand human behavior, displayed his findings on a large screen. "The predictability index has helped bridge the gap between our species," Peter explained. "By showing that human chaos follows certain patterns, we've helped council species become more comfortable with our methods." Grand Counselor Plex nodded. "Indeed. After careful deliberation lasting many months, the Council has voted to offer Earth full membership status," President Clark smiled. "That's wonderful news." However, the Grand Counselor continued, there would be conditions. Humans would need to follow the path of logic in official matters. Your ships would need to operate according to Council protocols. Your unpredictability would need to be contained. The room fell silent. George exchanged glances with Olivia Wright, who had become Earth's leading expert on alien biology. President Clark leaned forward. "With respect, Grand Counselor, that unpredictability is what makes us human. It's also what saved the Council from the Kreltor." "A temporary crisis," the Grand Counselor replied. "Order must prevail for long-term stability." Before anyone could respond, the room shook. Coffee cups rattled on the table. "Earthquake," George said, standing up. "Everyone stay calm." Another tremor, stronger this time, shook the building. The alien delegates looked alarmed as lights flickered. "This was not in the visit schedule," Ambassador Zixtar said nervously. The communication system chimed. "Madam President, we have a 7.2 magnitude earthquake centered 30 miles from the city. Damage reports coming in. The Lincoln Memorial has partially collapsed with tourists inside." President Clark stood immediately. "Activate emergency protocols. Admiral Miller, I need your help coordinating rescue efforts." The next hours were chaos, but organized chaos. The alien delegation watched in fascination as humans sprang into action. Some followed carefully practiced emergency plans, while others improvised solutions on the spot. When standard equipment couldn't reach trapped tourists, local construction workers created makeshift tools. When communication systems failed in one area, college students set up a relay using modified gaming equipment. George worked alongside rescue teams, directing efforts based on both established protocols and gut feelings about where help was most needed. At one point, he noticed Grand Counselor Plex watching him intently. "This is humanity at its best," George said to the alien leader. "Plans are important, but when they fail, we adapt." "I am beginning to understand," the Grand Counselor replied quietly. By nightfall, the immediate crisis had passed. Remarkably, few lives had been lost thanks to the rapid response. The Council delegation gathered with Earth's leaders to resume discussions. "What I witnessed today," Grand Counselor Plex began, "was not random chaos. It was something else. Your people followed plans where appropriate, then abandoned them when necessary. You worked both independently and as a collective. It defies our understanding of social organization." Dr. Peter Johnson smiled. "We call it organized chaos. Humans function best with a framework that allows for individual initiative." "Like jazz music," Olivia added. "There's structure, but also room for improvisation." The Grand Counselor's expression shifted, the alien equivalent of a smile. "The Council has existed for thousands of years by following the path of logic. We believed it was the only way to maintain galactic peace. But the Kreltor nearly defeated us because they could predict our every move. Sometimes the logical choice is to be a little illogical," President Clark suggested. "Indeed." The Grand Counselor looked around the room at the humans gathered there. "I propose a new arrangement. Rather than requiring humans to change, perhaps the Council should learn from you. We would like to create a new position. Chaos. Consultants." George couldn't help laughing. You want us to teach you how to be unpredictable? Precisely, said the Grand Counselor. The galaxy needs a balance of order and chaos. For too long, we have favored only one approach. Later that evening, as the Earth delegation celebrated with their alien guests, Ambassador Zixitar approached George with a data pad. My final report, the ambassador said. After 3 years studying humans, I've titled it Understanding Humans. A survival manual. George glanced at the opening line. The most terrifying thing about humans is not that they are unpredictable, but that their unpredictability works. You've come a long way from thinking we were too dangerous to join galactic society, George noted. Oh, you are still dangerous, Zixtar replied. But now we understand that the galaxy needs a little danger to survive. Several council species have already begun adopting human practices. That must terrify the traditionalists, George said. Absolutely, the ambassador agreed. But they'll adapt. They'll have to. That's the lesson humans have taught us. Adapt, or perish. As the celebration continued around them, George looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, other challenges waited. Other threats that would require both careful planning and wild improvisation. The galaxy was slowly learning what humans had always known, that chaos wasn't something to fear, but something to embrace. To chaos, George said, raising his glass. The Grand Counselor, in an unprecedented break from tradition, raised his glass in return. To chaos, in moderation. And across the stars, the story spread of the strange, unpredictable humans who had terrified the galaxy by showing them a new way to exist. Not through perfect order, but through perfect adaptation to an imperfect universe.